Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the delay there. Just as we're moving into the virtual/digital, couple of quick minor issues, but we got everything. So thank you very much for your patience. I'm Chris Hartman, once again with the New Jersey Alliance for Action. Welcome everybody to our virtual hospitals event. We're really happy all of you could join us today. I am just going to give you a couple of quick techie things for today's event, and I'm going to turn it over to Jerry Keenan, our Executive Vice President, and he will be introducing our co-chairs for this event. We can kick everything off. So, number one, what I wanted to let everybody know is welcome. We gave you a quick rundown of Remo before, so now you're in presentation mode, which looks a little bit different than the mode that you were in before with the virtual networking. The room will be open at the very end after everything is over. We're going to leave it open for virtual networking again. So if you would like to remain after the presentation today, you can do so there. Again, as we said before, if you have a couple of quick minor issues, once again, for some weird reason, refreshing your browser, things like that, turning your sound off, turning it back on seems to just kind of correct those issues. And we highly recommend logging in with Google Chrome or the newest version of Microsoft Edge. Both of those seem to work the best. Myself, Penny Grasso, our Director of Communications, as well as Lynn Swalje, our Office Manager, the three of us will be on the entire time in the background. We're going to be monitoring everything. You can type a message into the chat. So if you have a tech issue, if you have a question, if your sound suddenly goes off, something like that, send us a message into that chat box and we will then private message you back and work through some of those issues. So don't worry, the three of us will be on the entire time to help you out. If you have a question for one of our attendees today, one of our speakers today, please type that on the right side of your screen. You're going to see a Q&A box. Go into the Q&A box and type that in. If we have time for questions in between, the co-chairs will let us know, and we'll be able to pause for questions. We have a packed agenda today, so I'm not sure if we'll be able to, but that's where you would send in the questions there. And if we have to, we can always do a Q&A later on. We can work with you after the event is over. Also, very important, the pre-registration list is in the chat. It's in there. We're going to be resending that in just a second. That will show you everybody that was registered for today's event. It will show you your fellow attendees. And we're trying to encourage as much networking as we can in this strange virtual time. So if you would like to reach out to someone, please reach out to Jerry Keenan or myself, and we'd be happy to do a virtual handshake and a virtual introduction. Also, there will be information in the chat about all of our sponsors today. I want to thank all of our sponsors for today's event. We have information about them in there. Jerry will also be giving you some more information about them in just a moment. That's basically it from me. Welcome once again. Let me introduce Jerry Keenan, our Executive Vice President, to kick off today's event. Thank you, everyone. Please stay safe. Please stay healthy. Speak with you soon.
Well, thanks, Chris, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hospitals Are Building. And I got to tell you, that's a perfect name for today's program, because today we're going to hear key details about billions of dollars worth of upcoming healthcare construction at hospitals in North, South, and Central New Jersey. We're also going to hear from some of New Jersey's utility companies. Now, why utility companies at a hospital construction program? Well, because they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to improve energy efficiency at healthcare facilities throughout the state. Each of these projects we'll learn about today are critical to the effort to build back New Jersey from the health and economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Before we get started, let me say thank you to our sponsors for making today possible. Our sponsors are Allen Brightway Electrical Utility, committed to superior quality and results. Concord Engineering Group, leading the charge in engineering airborne infectious disease mitigation for healthcare building systems in response to COVID-19. The Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters, representing more than 42,000 unionized carpenters throughout Delaware, the District of Columbia, Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, Virginia, West Virginia, and 10 North Carolina counties. William C. Sproul, Executive Secretary, Treasurer. Foley Incorporated. We create customer experiences that create customers for life. Fox Rothschild LLP. Nimble, entrepreneurial, resourceful, qualities you want in your lawyers. Gilbar Industries Incorporated. Holt Construction, We are builders. LF Driscoll Healthcare, construction managers, builders. New Jersey Natural Gas, providing safe, reliable natural gas service for over 60 years. NK Architects, New Jersey's premier healthcare planning and design firm. Headquartered in Morristown, NK Architects also has a robust New York City office and just last month opened an office in Center City, Philadelphia. O'Donnell and Nacarado, excellence in engineering. Progressive Pipeline Management, innovation, quality, trust. PSE&G, PSE&G, we make things work for you. Sheet Metal Workers Local 25, Sheet Metal Workers Local 25, the best trained professionals. Joseph DeMarc, President and Business Manager. Tor Electric Company, proudly serving you for more than 50 years. And Witham. Witham is a top-ranking public accounting firm providing advisory, audit, and tax services to businesses and individuals on a local to global scale. Visit www.witham.com for more information. We're going to start our program with our event co-chair, Amanda Del Bene. Amanda is also the Alliance for Action Treasurer, and she's the Managing Director of Public Finance Investment at Raymond James Associates. And also, Amanda is also a good friend. Amanda, it's great to see you here today. Thanks for being here, and thanks for co-chairing this important event.
Thank you so much, Jerry. I'm so happy to be here. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a really great turnout this morning of more than 150 professionals in healthcare, construction, utility, and government. We also have a great group of industry leaders here to provide us remarks this morning. Healthcare construction and its expansion is vital to the future of the state and to our effort to build back New Jersey. The investments we'll learn about today will help provide New Jersey with the first-class healthcare system we need and deserve. The improvements will give us access to world-class facilities, new technology, modern treatments, and the best doctors. These investments are also critical to the state's economy and way of life. Each improvement creates jobs, attracts new investment, and draws more people and businesses to the state. I'm honored to co-chair today's event, and I'm pleased to introduce my co-chair and fellow Alliance for Action board member, Bob Gerard. Bob is the Senior Manager of Business Development at Hull Construction, and this morning he'll provide us with some introductory remarks on healthcare construction in New Jersey. Good morning, Bob.
Thanks so much, Amanda. It's a pleasure to co-host this event with you, and I appreciate your help putting together a great panel of healthcare representatives who will be discussing the steps they took during COVID-19 crisis, along with their current and future construction activities. I do have to say I've received, as I'm sure you have, a host of different chats, and this REMO program is extremely interesting. So we'll hope to have a great event. We appreciate the sponsors that have been part of this overall program. We also want to thank all those who are taking time out of their extremely busy schedules, and I'm sure everybody is dressed up and ready to go. We appreciate your time here today. Amanda and I would like to thank the Alliance and certainly Phil Beecham and Jerry Keenan for once again hosting this program in its virtual format, and also thank the Alliance staff, including Chris, Penny, and Lynn for their hard work behind the scenes to make sure a program like this runs smoothly. I can tell you I was not a big proponent of this virtual event concept, and quite frankly fought both Jerry and Chris pretty hard on this, but they said it would work. So I'm here and with Amanda co-hosting this program. Unfortunately, I do have some disappointing news to share. I received a call late Monday afternoon from Don Ellis of Hackensack Meridian Health, informing myself and the Alliance that he would not be able to participate in today's program due to undisclosed reasons. I'm aware of what those reasons are, and they certainly make a whole lot of sense. Don was extremely apologetic and vowed to participate in next year's event if at all possible. All right, before we bring on our first presenter, we'd be remiss discussing the state of healthcare construction in New Jersey and the impact that COVID-19 has had on healthcare systems in New Jersey. And certainly, we can all empathize with the healthcare folks for what they've been through over the course of the last 4 or 5 or 6 months. Unfortunately, if you speak to these professionals, they do expect that here in the Northeast, certainly New Jersey, we're going to have a second wave in the fall that's really going to stress and tax our healthcare system. So Godspeed to those folks, because they do just a wonderful job. Penny, if we could hit that first slide, please. All right, so let's talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit about the financial impact on New Jersey's healthcare systems. In the first month of the COVID crisis, from March through April, healthcare revenue fell 32%, or roughly $650 million. And expenses rose 10.6%, or over $214 million. So well over $870,000 of expense and revenue decline. And it should be noted that that expense of $214 million didn't include the internal steps that the hospitals took to increase their bed capacity to accept all the COVID-19 patients. Obviously, one of the single greatest impact on that loss of revenue was Governor Murphy's Executive Order 109 that was issued in late March. And that suspended all what we call elective surgeries, but most of those surgeries are scheduled surgeries. And while the order was lifted in late May, it is clear that hospital management and CFOs in particular are concerned about compromised cash flow, as well as whether or not new or current healthcare capital construction expenditures will be made. We're hoping that our speakers will give us positive thumbs up on things that were planned. But at this point, we're not 100% sure as to the impact that COVID has had on healthcare construction, at least in New Jersey. Next slide, Pen. All right, I think there are naysayers out there that say, well, geez, the hospitals received a tremendous amount of money, and they did. 53 hospitals received over $1.7 billion initially as part of the initial funding of the Federal CARES Act. However, when you talk to healthcare executives, they indicate that $1.7 billion doesn't offset the loss of care that was experienced by our healthcare facilities, and certainly doesn't offset the expense that was there. Believe it or not, New Jersey hospitals did receive $2.7 billion overall through the end of May, and an additional 16 hospitals that were hardest hit in the northeast, in the northern section of New Jersey, also received an additional $280,000 in June of 2020. So fortunately, the federal government has attempted to help bail out our New Jersey healthcare systems. But at the end of the day, even with all the federal funding, there's still a hole in the balance sheets of all of our healthcare facilities in New Jersey. And without question, the impact is significant, and again, may fall down to our healthcare construction activities. We do know that our hospitals took immediate steps and spent significant capital dollars to meet the patient surge, which included the construction or modification of existing departments to increase the number of critical care beds. That was most important as these patients streamed into the hospitals. They also did some temporary things, including establishing temporary ventilation systems to create negative pressure environments in an effort to minimize staff exposure to patients. So a lot of great steps were taken. Many of you who are on the call today participated in helping those healthcare facilities move on a temporary basis But certainly now we're starting to get into the realization that this crisis is going to impact hospitals in the fall, and additional steps are going to need to be taken. What are the impacts that we've seen from COVID and healthcare, real estate, and construction? We talk about a few of them. In past years, I talked about a movement to wellness, and a process that says to the acute care hospitals, we want to treat the sickest of our patients in the acute care setting, but we want to make sure that we get ahead for patients, so we try to keep them out of the acute care setting. And when we talk about the segmentation of wellness and acute care in healthcare real estate, that's really what we're talking about. And I believe, as do others, including a great document that was published by the Jones Lang LaSalle JLL company on COVID-19 and its impact on healthcare real estate and construction, that segmentation is going to be accelerated to the point where we're going to see an increase in growth in a number of different areas. First and foremost, we're going to see an increase in growth in our medical office building and ambulatory care settings. We all know and are aware of the fact that these MOBs and ambulatory care settings, both owned by healthcare systems as well as by private developers, are expanding. Interestingly enough, the CARES Act provided over $130 billion of funds to these private developers, as well as the Payroll Protection Program provided significant dollars to many of the tenants of those MOBs and ACCs, including our acute care facilities that have and own these spaces. So there's a great belief that from an MOB ACC standpoint, we will see continued growth throughout New Jersey and throughout the United States when it comes to the impact from COVID-19. What else have the acute care facilities looked at, and many have implemented? Thermal scanning units. If you're like me, almost every place you go, including golf courses, they're taking your temperature. They're doing it with a little device that's put on the top of your head, but it's not practical from a healthcare standpoint to do that. So many have moved to thermal scanning units at all their primary entrances, and they're identifying folks with a temperature greater than 100.4 degrees. So I think you're going to see this as a bit of a standard, not only in our healthcare settings, but perhaps in some of our commercial settings as well. Modification of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. We're seeing a host of different healthcare facilities do evaluations of their HVAC systems, including assurances that they're adding UVC into their air handling units. They're also evaluating inline air purification, including the modification of HVAC filtration in these air handling units. In many of the non-patient areas, they're putting portable air purification filtration units in those spaces. And they're also evaluating the ability to increase the number of air exchanges in their environments. Obviously, we all wish we could have 100% outside air, as opposed to the ASHRAE recommendation of 30% outside air when it comes to our patient care environment. But as situations dictate, the need for 100% outside air is certainly something that needs to be addressed. And what about this term, acuity, adaptability, unit design, and modification? We've all heard or read about the fact that our design professionals can tell us more and more about this, that design going forward should allow for patient rooms and units to allow for those patients to stay in a centralized room throughout their stay, from admission through discharge. Well, what we have seen from the COVID crisis is not only will that acuity adaptability room be something of the future, but that new design is going to have to include some level of modification to the existing or future designed HVAC systems to allow for additional air exchanges and to allow for additional outside air, depending on the severity of the medical case that's presented. All right, before we get to our first presenter, I do want to identify some additional healthcare construction activities from organizations that were not able to join us today. Many of you have heard or read about these upcoming projects over the past months and years, and I want to thank many of you who are on the call today in providing me with some insight to these upcoming projects. And I'm just going to increase the size here so I can see what the heck I'm talking about. All right, let's talk about RWJBarnabas Health and the Rutgers Cancer Institute in New Jersey, CINJ. All of you have read about this. Most of you are aware of it. A cancer pavilion that's over 600,000 square feet. RWJBarnabas is going to spend north of $500 million. We know this project is located in New Brunswick, New Jersey. It's going to have inpatient and outpatient services, including state-of-the-art chemotherapy and radiation therapy, all major diagnostic equipment, ORs, and the like. You can certainly read that. There will be a central utility plant, which will produce chilled water, steam, and power. There will also be a separate parking garage. We know that Rutgers, RWJBarnabas, and the New Brunswick Development Corporation are all owners, developers of this project. And we have some great professionals on this team. You have HOK as the architect, AKF providing mechanical, electrical, plumbing, O'Donnell and Nakarada from a structural standpoint, and Concord Engineering handling the mechanical, electrical, plumbing for the central utility plant. Next slide. What about RWJ's Monmouth Medical Center at Fort Monmouth? You really have 4 projects plus a parking area and parking garage. So let's talk a little bit more about what we anticipate to be built on the former Fort Monmouth site in, I wanted to say Eatontown, New Jersey, but it's not Eatontown. So I'll get it in a second. It starts with a cancer center. And right now that cancer center is planned to be freestanding, 82,000 square foot structure, 3 stories. Although that cancer center, a CINJ facility, may be incorporated into the acute care hospital. There is going to be a standalone medical office building, ambulatory care facility, approximately 91,000 square feet. That's going to be developed by a private developer on behalf of Robert Wood Johnson Barnabas Health. The acute care hospital, approximately 600,000 to 700,000 square feet. That's going to be a biggie. 250 inpatient beds, ORs and the like. Again, my guess is that acute care hospital will be set up to deal with some of the sickest patients that exist out there, those with severe acuity. Once again, RWJ has chosen the central utility plant. That will serve all buildings, site amenities, and the parking structure. Combined heat and power, and we're going to hear a little bit more about combined heat and power, and I hope we hear about it from our speakers as well, will be evaluated. Interestingly enough, the central utility plant may be incorporated into one of the buildings. If so, it would likely be the acute care hospital. You're going to have a significant parking need and parking garage. 800, 900 spaces in the parking garage and over 1,700 parking spaces needed. The target is Q3 of 2021 of a construction start. HDR is the architect, AKF is the MEP, O'Donnell Nakarada is the structural, and Langen Engineering is handling the civil engineering on this project. A construction manager has not been selected at this time, but they're very, very close. Let's talk about a couple of other RWJBarnabas Health projects. Monmouth Medical Center has a medical office building, 80,000 square feet, that's being developed at the Monmouth Mall. At one point in time, there was a thought that there would be 2 of these MOBs. Right now, they focused on just one. Rendina Healthcare Real Estate is the developer. and RSC Architects. Ruther and Bowen is handling the structural, and Langen is handling the civil engineering. Jersey City Medical Center has an ED and surgical expansion, a 2-floor expansion that's taking place. 55,000 square foot addition, 27,500 of new ED, as well as renovating the existing ED space, and another 27,500 on the second floor for ORs with 8 OR suites. And you have HOK as the architect, AKF as the MEP and fire protection, and O'Donnell Nakarada as the structural engineer. I know we're going to move to a next slide. Newark Beth Israel's up there. Many of you have read about this new project at Newark Beth Israel. It was part of a master plan that they did. Includes 3 building additions and numerous interior renovations. About 27,000 square feet of changes, creating a new main lobby and reception area, registration, retail cafe, gift shop, etc. You have 6,675 square feet, 3-story addition with an administrative suite, as well as expanded diagnostic, relocation and nuclear medicine, and expanded surgical services. That's a theme for most of the new construction that's planned out there, as well as a hybrid OR on the 3rd floor. Additions to ED, again, very, very common. So we'll get another 2,000 square feet of ED and a reorganized pediatric and fast track units that will support the main acute ED unit at Newark Beth Israel. And lastly, an alteration of 14,000 square feet of medical surge activities. That's okay, Penn. What else does RWJ Barnabas have? Somerset, the University Hospital at Somerset. This is interesting because this could be a 2-floor or a 3-floor addition to an existing 2-story pavilion. And for all of you facility folks and design folks, Somerset Medical Center did this right. They created this initial 2-story pavilion building with the ability to expand up an additional 3 floors. They also did the same thing for the parking garage. So kudos to those initial designers and structural folks who looked ahead and said, someday we may need to expand this facility. Right now we're looking at a 2-floor addition to the 2-story pavilion building, but possibly the addition of a 3rd floor. That will have an additional floor added to the adjoining or adjacent parking garage. There's a connector there. Array is the architect. LKU Group is the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and O'Donnell Nakarada is on there from a structural standpoint. RWJ New Brunswick. There's a new south tower that is in design right now that includes 30 new ORs, and I'm told a new central sterile supply. Our friends from Stantec are the architect. We have Highland as the mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Blanchard is the construction manager, and O'Donnell Nakarada is structural again. Deborah Heart and Lung Center. This is a new addition. Folks are doing a nice cardiac cath lab renovation with equipment upgrades and a pharmacy project that was designed and is out for bid right now. They also have some PSE&G energy efficiency work that Mike Savage will be talking about. But most important is the fact that in 2021, the expectation is that there will be 3 new patient floors that are added to Deborah Heart and Lung. Ewing Cole is the architect for the cardiac cath labs and pharmacy project, and Siemens is the equipment provider for the new cath labs. Summit Health Management. Oh, go back to Summit Health Management for a second. Those folks are great. They just announced opening something up in Bergen County, but this multi-specialty and ambulatory surgery center is located in Clifton, New Jersey. It's going to have urgent care, imaging, laboratory, oncology, and an ambulatory surgery center. Interesting enough, it's 78,000 square foot program inside of a building that's about double that size. Stantec is the owner's rep, project management on the firm. Gensler is handling the architectural and engineering. Langen is there from a civil standpoint, and Blanchard is handling the construction management. And last but not least, we have the Inspira Health Network. They announced in early 2020 a 5-year strategic partnership with Philips Health, very, very similar to what Westchester Medical Center announced 2 or 3 years ago, and have gone on to do a host of different projects. This is $50 million in diagnostic imaging solutions, patient care, monitoring systems, and minimally invasive solutions. I'd also like to do a shout out and congratulations to Amy Mansue, who was announced as the new president and chief executive officer for Inspira. She's a great supporter of the New Jersey Alliance for Action, and we want to give her a positive shout out. I also want to thank and congratulate John D'Angelo, current CEO and driver of expansion and construction since 2000 in Inspira. That includes over 150 medical locations, 10 new urgent care centers, and a new medical center and cancer center. So John's a friend, and certainly he's done a wonderful job in terms of building out Inspira. 2 last quick slides. We did want to comment on the New Jersey Economic Development Authority's Energy Resiliency Bank program. I do have to thank my friends from Shoreline Energy Advisors, as well as a couple of other folks, for providing me with some insight into what's happening with regards to 8 hospitals that receive grant dollars under the CDBG disaster allocation to support distributed generation. As you can see, the Barnabas Medical Center construction is beginning. Newark Beth Israel, we have a 2.5 megawatt system that's in design, so that will be out to bid. Jersey City Medical Center, that design is complete, and the DPR Forest team is moving forward on the construction. The Somerset project is in design. St. Peter's was completed in 2019. Hunterdon Medical Center is currently under construction. Trinitas is also under construction. And I'm going to allow Andy Bush to tell us how great the current combined heat and power project is working at Cooper University Hospital. And lastly, while this is not part of the ERB program, there are Board of Public Utility microgrid pilot programs that exist. This is phase 2 funding, and we have a host of hospitals that are involved as part of various county or municipal applications. We have Mountainside in Montclair. We have both of the Atlanticare Regional Medical Centers getting involved. We have Meadowview. We have Hoboken University Medical Center, and we have Jersey Shore University Medical Center, part of Hackensack Meridian Health, that are also attempting to participate in the microgrid pilot program. I've taken enough of your time, and you certainly didn't want to hear me speak anymore. So I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, Joseph Lorino, who's the Vice President of Facilities Management at Valley Hospital. Joe's going to talk about the system and what's ongoing there and beyond. Joe joined Valley Hospital System in November of 2018. In his role, he is responsible for engineering, plant operations, off-site property management, facilities development, and construction, including the new Valley Hospital System in Paramus, New Jersey. Prior to joining the Valley Hospital System, he worked as a consultant, providing engineering, commissioning, energy, and sustainable guidance to healthcare organizations on facility operations, construction, and project management. He also held various facility management and operation positions at several healthcare institutions. Joe holds a Bachelor of Engineering degree from the State University of New York Maritime College and a Master's of Business Administration from Columbia University, Graduate School of Business Administration. He's also a registered PE in the state of New York and a LEED accredited professional. Please join me in welcoming Joe Lorino.
Thank you, Bob. I just want to just state that everything that Bob said about the effects of COVID and what it had on our particular healthcare system were spot on. There's been a lot of effects of it, financially and also mentally, dealing with that. So again, when you see those signs on people's lawns about the heroes, the frontline heroes, it is very true, and that includes the service group, of the engineering staff and the EVS staff as well. I want to talk to you about this very special project that's going on in Paramus, and when I say a very special project, I mean special to me personally, but especially special for the people here at Valley Hospital who have fought a long fight for a replacement hospital, and we were able to be embraced by the Borough of Paramus and accepted us as this new hospital. The Borough of Paramus, the people there are very they think very well, and they know retail, brick and mortar retail is no longer the way to go. So having a hospital in the healthcare system is very, very important to them. I also want to say, rather than look at my face, I would suggest that you hit the 4 arrows on the corner of the presentation, and that will give you a full screen of the presentation, because there's a lot of small words here. Back in September of 2019, Modern Healthcare put out the largest health projects, and we were tied for ninth, and in reality, we are tied for eighth as the eighth largest, back then, the eighth largest healthcare construction project. We were able to add about a $40 million parking garage to the project, as well as about 50 to 60, fit out 50 to 60,000 square feet of shelf space, bringing our total cost of the project well over $800 million. So I'm pretty proud of that. And that's why I say this is a very special project for me, one of the largest projects I've worked on, and probably very, dealing with the passionate people at Valley Health, and the passionate people in the project is very, very important to me. Next slide, please. So again, just a reminder of what our project is like. It's in about an 875,000 square foot hospital with 372 private rooms and NICU bassinets and 70 ED treatment rooms. Like I said, we have a 1,500 space parking garage attached to the project. And again, we had our groundbreaking back in November of 2019. We actually started demolition of the existing warehouses that were there, the slabs, back in July of 2019, and we are still targeted for a December 2023 date for our first patient. And you can see here a list of all the items that will be contained in the hospital. It'll be a fully functional hospital, including support services as well. Next slide, please. So if you look at our site plan of our project, of our future project, and unfortunately I can't use my pointer, but there are 6 distinctive buildings in this project. You could see sort of the Y-shaped is our north pavilion, our medical patient north pavilion. Toward the left is our west pavilion with our patient rooms, and down in the south is our women's and children's, which contains C-section ORs, NICU, PEDS, as well as postpartum and antepartum rooms. The structure you see on the right is the parking garage, and then the green area in the center is our podium building, which contains our interventional floors, our ED, and north of that has our central utility plant, which is contains steam boilers, hot water boilers, chiller plant, emergency diesel generator plant, and we have a shelf space. And we're currently, based on the recent blackouts we've had, we are evaluating fitting out the shelf space for a cogeneration plant. So we are working there. This is a campus. Toward the left in the gray area is our Lucco Cancer and Same Day Surgery Center, and to the right, the other dark gray area is our 140 East Ridgewood Avenue medical office building. Next slide, please. And you can see a stacking plan of what it looks like of the three distinctive pavilions or towers that we have, all the beds and how it will be distributed, as well as the lower floors where the support services will be housed. Next slide. And here's a typical layout of our floors: 36 beds in the north, and private patient rooms, as well as on the left side, our west pavilion, which has 36 private patient rooms. All of our offstage action occurs in the center, in the core, it's meant to have everything offstage, so we don't have any patients or their families see what's going on in the back. Not that we're hiding anything, but it's sometimes very intrusive. And on the south there is our typical floor for our women's and children's. Next slide. Another rendering of our first floor lobby and main entrance, where we would we're hoping would be either patient drop off and patient discharge. We also have a second floor lobby, which will be connected to our parking garage, and we expect most of our visitors and our staff to enter through the second floor. Next slide. Here's our first floor lobby with a grand monumental stair going up to our second floor lobby, and this leads to our visitor elevators toward the back, as well as our chapel. And here's a view of the rear of or looking north of our hospital. On the right there is our west pavilion, and on the left there is our parking garage. And you could see that there are walkways and gardens from our 140 East Ridgewood Avenue building, and also a main entrance coming in up the stairs there for our second floor lobby. Next slide. So currently, we are at steel fabrication. Steel erection. We've built all of our concrete elevator towers, as you can see there. We've probably completed. We started on May 18th. Our first steel beam came in, and on May 18th we started erecting all of our steel. What you see there is the north tower being erected up to the 8th floor mechanical equipment room penthouse. This is looking north from our 140 East Ridgewood Avenue building, and we've also pretty much started infilling. You can see on the left photo, started infilling with steel with our podium building as well. About 40%, I would say, of the steel has been completed. And we have we feel that we would be topping out sometime in either late December or early January. We had some delays due to COVID back in March and April, but our construction manager, Torcon, did a great job managing the absentee or the lack of manpower, and we feel that we're back on schedule as a result of that. Afterwards, next slide, please. And you can see we've all of our permits, all of our approvals have been completed, and now we're in the construction phase. We expect substantial completion in end of June of 2023, and with 6 months of activation, and finally the first patient in December of 2023. Next slide, please. And here is what I said, basically a summary of that. We begin interior fit out in September of 2021, start garage construction in 2022 and March of 2022, complete the construction in June, and then, as we mentioned, activation, inspections, approvals, so we could see our first patient in December of 2023. Here's a short list of some of the, and I would recommend you zoom in, but here's a short list of some of the contractors and some of the awards we've had so far, showing the subcontract name, the type of work they are doing or planning to do, and then finally the union or the local they belong to. And you can see it's been a number of people or contractors, anywhere from ground improvement, site work, to elevator, masonry, and all the fire protection, plumbing, HVAC that we've awarded. Torcon has done a great job splitting up the responsibilities and of the, whether it's the core and shell, whether it's the risers or the fit out, and splitting up and to the many different subcontractors that are listed here. And I feel very confident moving forward that we will have a very successful project. During the peak, when we start our garage in March of 2022, have 500 to 600 workers during this peak. At that time, we will be building our garage and doing the fit out. And it's going to be, quite a sight to see, I think. One of the biggest dilemmas we have is where we're going to park all these people. And I'm working very closely with the people at Torcon and our internal Valley people to find alternate ways to provide parking. Next slide, please. One of the things I'm most proud of this project is that we are full-blown performing all of our mechanical, electrical, plumbing prefabrication off-site. And we are, these are examples of other projects, but we are looking forward to doing this, and it's a new thing with all of us. I challenged the people at Torcon to provide a system or program for MEP fabrication, and they took the football and they ran with it, and I think we're going to score a touchdown in this process in doing so. Next slide. I feel and I think it kind of shows in our subcontractor participation. And we feel that this is something that it's going to be, there's going to be many advantages. And number one, out of all of that, I think, is increased work quality. This fabrication will occur in a warehouse that we've just leased. It's a 50,000 square foot warehouse in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, and which is about 15 short minutes from the construction site. And we feel that it will increase work quality because I think we'll get better quality. Not that we don't get good quality, but I think we'll get better quality as a result of fabricating these systems, these pumping systems, the above ceilings, the risers, 4 foot off the ground, rather than being lift or being up in a ceiling or being on a ladder. I think we'll get a better quality. And what does that mean to me? It means better patient care, less leaks, better supply of systems, and better environment for healing for our patients. Worker safety. Workers will be working off the, 4 foot off the ground rather than on lifts or scaffolds or scaffolding. Waste reduction, LEED. This is a gold. We have applied for LEED Gold for healthcare, and we feel that there will be a waste reduction as a result of putting this together. Less waste and less things can throw out, and obviously a cost reduction. Schedule certainty. While the building is going up, we plan, as it's going up now, and while the building's being closed, we plan to have most of this prefabrication, MEP prefabrication and risers completed, ready to be installed. As I mentioned earlier, reduction in worker parking. If I can put workers in Fairlawn in the warehouse, there'll be less on the site, less that I need to rent or provide parking for workers. And finally, I feel that there'll be a lower, long-term life cost savings. Right now, we're seeing that the costs associated with building these are a lot less than your standard traditional construction methods. And again, as I mentioned, we're going to do above ceiling mechanical systems, risers, our central utility plant, the pump skids, for instance, the heat exchangers will be built off site and will be assembled back at the site. Water walls, OR modular ceilings, and patient head walls are big things that we are prefabricating off site. Again, I feel that there will be better quality. Another item that we've done and is a successful new hospital mock-ups that we've built in our 140 East Ridgewood Avenue site. And before my time, our architect HDR developed 3P workshops, which means process, preparation, and production. And again, this was an immersive design workshop, and it had multidisciplinary teams, including the design team and all of the teams at Valley Hospital, support staff, including clinical, nursing, and so forth. And it started with building and laying out the hospital floors on paper, and then led to 3D models being built, and people were looking of how the actual systems and how each department interact with one another. And it was very successful from what I understand, because we went from 3D models to building cardboard built rooms. And we feel that now, as we build the mock-ups, and I'll show you those in a second, we're able to bring hospital staff, potential patients, and even the family member group to look at our mock-ups and to give their feedback on how the systems will work and how will it interact. And it gives them the ability to make design decisions. Some people have difficulty reading drawings and conceptualizing how the size and distance are, but putting them in an actual room is very, very important. So finally, we also reviewed the constructability of rooms, which was very important to Torcon and their team to see how the actual rooms can be built. And there's been a lot of comments associated with that. Unfortunately, our final review was supposed to happen in March, but it's been delayed due to COVID-19. So I'd like to walk you through a couple of the rooms. We built an OR mock-up with working, we had the whole mock-up. It's an actual general OR, about 600 square feet. And we were able to bring the peri-op team and give us feedback on whether it's boom locations, whether it's medical gas, whether it's outlets, whether it's lighting locations. And they gave some pretty good feedback as a result of that. There was some changes in design. Next slide. A patient room, an actual patient room mock-up. Nursing was very key. We have it's a private patient room that has a clinical area, patient area, and a family area back there in the sleeper. You could see that, as well as a full bathroom with shower on the other side of that wall. But again, very, very critical as to location of the light switches, med gas outlets, electrical outlets, and even where the charting station would be located. So really, really good feedback. We plan to build a patient room, an actual prototype patient room in the building as our first room to make sure we do it right before we build the other 370. We also plan to build a prototype general OR in the room in the actual hospital to make sure that we get the rest of the ORs right. Next slide, please. A labor and delivery room, again, full labor and delivery room with an area for the spouse or partner. Again, a lot of comments and lots of feedback from the actual people that will be operating or be tending to these rooms. Next slide. A PACU prep recovery room, which it's something that's important as we have multiple of these rooms. Again, the location of the outlets, the location of the charting station, and the location of the switches were very, very important, and privacy for the patient. And finally, last slide is the ED exam room. A lot of discussion about privacy and noise. Do we put cubicle curtains or do we put sliding doors in? And as a result of that, we decided both, for example. Next slide. So I know a lot of people are asking what's going to happen in the Ridgewood campus. And this is probably a similar slide that I gave the last year when I presented. We will maintain a campus in Ridgewood. We have not decided what the healthcare services are, but we are planning to make this an outpatient area, an outpatient campus, and our Paramus, our new replacement hospital, as the inpatient area. But I can say, just to follow up what Bob was saying, I can say that we are continuing with renovation projects and infrastructure upgrades on this campus because we are, we know that this campus will remain. And so we are in the process of completing HVAC upgrades, lighting, and flooring of 8 of our 18 ORs, as well as the 5 air handling units that provide conditioned air to those spaces and surrounding areas. That's a major project. We renovated a whole unit last year, and to maintain 28 beds, private beds. So we continue, and even though COVID has affected us on the operating expenses, we feel that it has not affected our ongoing renovation projects. Those are already funded, and we will continue to have projects in the Ridgewood campus, even after we move to Paramus. Next slide. So Bob asked me to see what are some of the effects of COVID, and yes, on our existing campus, a lot of the items that he mentioned, whether it was, we converted 200 patient beds to negative pressure isolation rooms with the use of portable HEPA filtration systems in the Ridgewood campus, and that enabled us to keep the infection rate down. But at the same time, we started thinking about our new project. And even though some people say this is a 100-year pandemic, the last time was the Spanish flu of 1918. We want to be prepared. And how are we going to do that? We are going to have the ability to increase the amount of negative pressure isolation rooms, both in patient rooms and ED exams, and we could turn double the amount of isolation rooms, both in those areas, with a click of a switch from our BMS or building management system. We also are able to take a whole unit, any one of the 8 nursing units, and turn the whole unit negative to the rest of the entire hospital. We could do that with our ED. We have over 70 exam rooms, and we could turn those exam rooms all negative at the flip of a switch if we want to. Another item that we've done is the nursing has asked us if we could take all the IV pumps and put them outside the hallway, and we have put pass-throughs or designed pass-throughs from the corridors, from the nursing corridor into the patient room. So that saves on PPE So any alarms or any changes that have to happen can be done in the corridors rather than the patient room, which is an isolation. We've redesigned areas in offices, waiting rooms, cafeteria, for example, to keep the social distancing of 6 feet, of at least 6 feet. In areas where we don't have the 6 feet, we are planning barriers. We have increased medical gas outlets and electrical outlets on all our head walls. So all of our head walls are similar to critical care head walls. So we have double the amount of med gas and emergency and normal outlets throughout the whole hospital. And that's meant to be for, should we have another surge, the need for whether it's medical air, or oxygen, or medical vacuum will be there. We've also increased, to support that, we've increased all of our medical gas source equipment to support the additional medical gas outlets. And as Bob mentioned, the ability to install thermal scanning devices in each entrance. And finally, we're considering UVC room disinfecting robots. Our EVS team is doing a great job, and our infection rate is very, very low, probably the lowest in the state. But we are also considering putting UVC robots as well. So that is my presentation for today. I don't know what's next, but I don't know if there's time for questions, or we should wait till the end. Penny, Amanda, you're on mute.
Thank you. I think we should probably wait till the end for questions, just to see if we have enough time to get
Great.
through everybody. But if you do have questions,
Great.
there is a Q&A function on the right portion of your screen where you can type in your questions. So if we have time for those, if not, Joe, we'll send them to you directly, and maybe you can answer them for participants.
Great, thank you very much.
Joe.
I appreciate that.
Bye-bye. I just wanted to take a second before I introduce the next speaker to talk about a couple technical issues. One is, as Joe mentioned, sometimes it's easier to see the full presentation rather than the speaker and the presentation. So in the upper right-hand corner of the presentation screen, there's an arrow, 4 arrows. You can click on that, and that'll make it a full screen, and you can just hit escape if you want to go back to the normal view. And then if you're having trouble seeing the presentation or having any issues, you can try to refresh your browser. That's helpful. If you're lagging behind in the presentation or your presentation won't load, that can be helpful there. And we are talking to each of the speakers about whether or not they're willing to share their presentations. I know some of you had trouble seeing Bob's slides, and Bob said he is willing to share those. So we'll get those to you. So moving on to our next speaker, we have Jerry Ryan. Jerry is the Energy Efficient Technology and Operations Manager for New Jersey Natural Gas. And in this role, he manages the deployment of New Jersey Natural Gas's efficiency programs, including both residential and commercial programs. He's responsible for energy efficiency related technical issues, program oversight, and program planning. And he serves on the Gas Technology Institute's Emerging Technology Program Committee as co-chair for the Consortium of Energy Efficiency Gas Committee and on the Program Administration Committee. He's represented New Jersey Natural Gas for energy efficiency at the Energy Solutions Center and as a subject matter expert for the American Gas Association. Jerry's a licensed New Jersey building inspector, subcode official, and construction official. He also holds certifications from the Building Performing Institute as a building analyst, multifamily building analyst, envelope professional, heating professional, and air conditioning and heat pump professional. Previous to his work at New Jersey Natural Gas, he owned and operated a retrofit construction company for 20 years. I'm pleased to welcome Jerry. Good morning, Jerry. Jerry, you appear to still be on mute. There you go.
Good morning, Amanda, and thank you very much for the introduction. And I want to start by thanking the audience for asking me to speak this morning. So good morning to everybody. Penny, if we could move to the next slide, please. I wanted to talk about our energy efficiency program, which we label as the Save Green Project. And back in 2018, we were given authority by the Board of Public Utilities for a significant expansion of that program. And as you can see with the map of New Jersey on the right, the green portion represents New Jersey Natural Gas's service territory. So we're primarily out on the mid coastal region of New Jersey, and then we have a small portion of Morris County up in the northern area of the state. But this expansion of our programs allowed us to offer this engineered solutions program, which I would like to talk to you about today. Next slide, please. So in developing that program that launched January 1st of 2019, I have to start by thanking PSE&G, and particularly Mike Savage, who was very helpful for New Jersey Natural Gas to get our program off the ground. The success of the PSE&G program was instrumental in kind of setting the stage and allowing us to enter the market and really be able to deploy the program based on the structure that they had developed over a period of 10 years. So we were really fortunate to have that ground floor to start out on. And also listed on this slide are the partners who really jumped in and helped us, immediately get off the ground with our program. Hackensack Meridian Health, Don Ellis and his team jumped in and gave us the 5 hospitals that are located in our service territory to, start out and do the energy audits necessary to really get the program off the ground. So we were able to immediately start with Hackensack Meridian, and that was very helpful. And I'll talk a little bit about those projects more in a minute. In addition to Hackensack Meridian, we were able to work with Robert Wood Johnson. We have 2 of their hospitals that we've completed energy audits on, and we have another hospital that is in the process of being completed. Obviously, some of the other speakers have talked about COVID and the impacts of COVID. We were really underway with our auditing program on several of these hospitals as we were hit with COVID, and it's really a credit to these hospitals and their management through that crisis that enabled us to get back in to be able to finish the audits and move forward with several of these projects. The other major hospital facility that we're working with is CentraState. Their main hospital is located in Freehold, New Jersey. And in addition to the hospitals that we're working with these healthcare companies, we also have some secondary facilities that we're beginning to audit. Next slide, please. So we worked with PSE&G, as I mentioned in the beginning, and we used many of the engineering firms that had worked with PSE&G. We put out an RFP to work in our program, and several companies responded. It was also helpful that the engineering firms had familiarity with the PSE&G program, which made the launch of our program smooth in that transition. So after the audit is completed, it moves into a design phase. And after the design phase, the projects will then go out for construction bidding. So as I mentioned with Hackensack Meridian, we've completed audits on 5 of their hospitals. And the 5 hospitals include Jersey Shore University Medical Center, Southern Ocean Medical Center down in Manahawkin, New Jersey, Bayshore, Riverview Hospital, and also Ocean Medical Center in Brick. So those audits have been completed. Jersey Shore, Bayshore, Riverview, Southern Ocean, and Ocean have all moved to the design stage. So we have identified projects for all of those hospitals, and we've been able to move those to design. Just the hospitals in the Hackensack Meridian Health Network represent over $20 million of projects. So a significant amount of money is going to be spent with the Hackensack network. Our original program design, we called for about $22 million in the program. Fortunately, when we did request money from the Board of Public Utilities to run our our energy efficiency programs, we had the ability to transfer funds. So we've gone back and we requested another $30 million to be transferred because we recognized the immediate need and the cost of these types of projects that we had identified just with working with Hackensack. So we were able to transfer that $30 million, and we have additional money available to service the other networks, the RWJ and the Central State projects that we're looking at. In addition to those hospital facilities, as I mentioned, we're looking at the secondary healthcare market, which was greatly impacted by COVID and has kind of slowed down some of those projects, but we do have the money available and in reserve once those projects can move forward again. So we anticipate, several of these projects, in addition to the Hackensack network, to move forward and be able to utilize the program. Next slide, please. So I thought I would talk about a couple of the projects that we've been able to identify so far. I'm using Jersey Shore University Medical Center, which is really Hackensack's flagship hospital in our service territory. We did, as I mentioned, complete the energy audit there and identified, over $4 million of energy conservation measures in the hospital itself. Adding in the engineering fees and the different costs associated with doing the work in the hospital, the total project cost is about $5.4 million. A significant project upgrade, and will include things like lighting, insulation, some boiler retrofit, boiler controls, economizers, etc. We're looking at one of the heat exchangers from the output to the existing CHP unit that is there at Jersey Shore, retrofitting air handler units, upgrades to the chiller plant, and replacing transformers. And those types of measures are typical in the hospital programs that we've analyzed so far. I'm sure Mike is speaking later, and those are the types of things that are being identified on several projects. But the unique part about this program is we're able to provide that $3.1 million against the total project cost as a rebate in this program, but then the balance can be financed at 0% through our on-bill repayment program over a period of 5 years. So it's significant in the fact that the hospitals can predict the cash flow associated with the projects that we're identifying, and also most of these projects work out cash flow positive. So the project that's undertaken makes total sense to the hospital facility. Next slide, please. I talked a little bit about RWJ in the beginning, and with the RWJ projects, we're looking at 3 facilities. There's a picture here of Monmouth Medical Center North. In addition to Monmouth Medical Center North, we're looking at Monmouth Medical Center South in Lakewood, and also the Community Medical Center down in Toms River. So those 3 hospitals are underway with audits. We've identified the projects for both Monmouth Medical Center North and for Monmouth Medical Center South. Just those 2 projects represent almost $11 million worth of projects. We're waiting for the final audits to be completed with the community. Again, we had a little bit of a hold up due to COVID. And RWJ wants to look at the total portfolio of projects that we identify before we move anything into design, but that process is underway right now, where they're reviewing the projects that we've identified. And in addition to the 3 hospitals, RWJ allowed us to look at their behavioral health center in Toms River. We just completed that audit recently. It looks like there's going to be about an additional $1 million worth of energy conservation measures that are identified there at that facility. So we're going to be well over $11 million committed to RWJ, and hopefully those projects will move into design shortly. And then shortly after design, we can put those projects out to bid for construction. Next slide, please. So I had talked about Centra State Medical Center. They're located in Freehold. We began talking to Centra State back in 2019 and went through several conversations with them. The one difference with Centra State is that that was not a hospital entity that had worked previously with PS. So there was a little more hand-holding and, talking through how the process worked in the program. They were very great to work with. They really wanted to understand and analyze, how the program structure worked, what New Jersey Natural Gas's role would be, how the engineers would perform their different responsibilities. And we got through all that, and now we're underway beginning the audit at the main campus there in Freehold. In addition to the main campus, very close to that in Freehold, they have 3 secondary healthcare facilities. 2 nursing homes. One is an assisted living facility and a nursing home, all on one site at Applewood. And we have begun the process of auditing those additional facilities. So we are anxiously awaiting the results of those energy audits, but feel we have a lot of opportunity when we, walk through those facilities initially and taking a look around. So very much looking forward to working with Centra State. In addition to the 3 facilities, actually I mentioned 4, 3 with Centra State and 1 with RWJ. We had 5 additional secondary healthcare facilities that we're talking to Hackensack Meridian Health about. 5 more nursing homes. They unfortunately, took the biggest impact here from COVID. We did complete the audits at all 5 of those facilities, but those projects, because of all the complications associated with COVID, are temporarily on hold. We're hoping to get those moving shortly. Hopefully by year end, we'll have some decisions. As you can imagine, with all the complexity that surrounds the different conditions that were created by COVID, I think all these different hospital entities and healthcare entities are kind of taking a look holistically about, what's going to be required coming out of this. And we had completed the audits. We have those presented at Hackensack, and that's part of that total overlook for all of their projects that's underway right now. So we're excited to get these projects moving, as I mentioned, from audit to design and then now into construction. We do not have the experience that PSE&G has had, getting these projects all the way to completion. But when I spoke to you last year, we were really just starting to kick the tires with this program. And now here we are, midway through 2020, or even a little bit later than midway. And we've been able to accomplish an awful lot since the last time I talked to you at this event. We're very proud of the way that we've been able to roll this program out and see a lot of opportunity. In addition to these healthcare projects, we are looking at a few other projects under this Engineered Solutions program. We have 2 of the community colleges, Ocean County College and the County College of Morris that we're taking a look at right now. We're talking to a lot of other people about possibilities under this program, and I fully want to spend the $50 million that we have reserved for this program. I think it's a great opportunity for the healthcare sector. And, as I mentioned early on, I particularly want to thank all of those partners who have stepped up and helped us really roll this program out. Next slide, please. So this slide really represents what's happening here in New Jersey. What's going on the energy efficiency side right now is there is a transition happening from the New Jersey Office of Clean Energy to the utilities. There are several programs that the utilities will now work together to implement. We are in serious discussions now with all of the utilities throughout the state, and we're looking to collaborate on what we are calling core programs. So the core programs will constitute both residential and C&I programs that can be rolled out and deployed commonly through the utilities. So the program structures will all be similar. Obviously, each utility will individually run their own programs, but we're trying to gain a consistency of how these energy efficiency programs are deployed throughout the state. And I think a great example of how this has already happened is this engineered solutions program that we were able to really pick up the ball from PSE&G and run with it. It's an example of the collaboration and the power that the utilities can have working together to try to institute an energy efficiency program. So stay tuned on this one. We're working to try to get these programs coordinated and launched by July of 2021. I know Mike will have a little more information about the powerful program that PSE&G is talking about. So we're all looking to try to work together to get these programs out the door. Next slide, please. That's really all I have for my presentation here today. Again, I want to thank the Alliance for having me speak, and hopefully I look forward to talking to you again and bringing you an update next year on all the accomplishments we were able to perform under this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Greatly appreciate. Tremendous move from last year to now. And the $50 million will go a long way to help rebuilding New Jersey and helping the folks who are on this program today. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Karen Martinez, project manager with Atlantic Health System. Karen is responsible for and manages all of construction at Morristown Medical Center, a 750 plus bed hospital with multiple surrounding MOBs and ambulatory surgery centers. Karen has been responsible for the recent vertical expansion of the Gagnon Cardiovascular Heart Hospital and employee parking garage expansion, where we had an opportunity to work with her, along with multiple interior renovation projects, including a new pediatric intensive care unit, a cancer center infusion, as well as a new MRI addition. Prior to joining Atlantic Health, Karen began her career as a structural engineer, designing projects in various sectors, including healthcare, higher education, commercial, and residential. Several years after receiving her professional engineering license, she made the switch to managing healthcare construction projects. She has managed new construction and renovation projects at major healthcare institutions in the greater New York area, including MSK, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and New York Presbyterian Columbia University, where she worked with Joe Lorino. She enjoys the opportunities and challenges that come while working in healthcare construction. And please join me in welcoming Karen Martinez as our next featured speaker.
Thank you, Bob, very much. Thank you for allowing me an opportunity to talk to you. I'm going to start our presentation giving you a little bit of who Atlantic Health System is. So Penny, if you can go to the next slide, I'd appreciate it. So what is, or who are we, or who is Atlantic Health System? So we're 5 acute care hospitals, including Morristown Medical Center and Morristown Overlook Medical Center in Summit, Newton Medical Center in Newton, Chilton Medical Center in Pompton Plains, and Hackettstown Medical Center in Hackettstown. We have over 400 off-site locations as well, including surgery centers, medical office buildings, and physician practices throughout our community. We perform over 60,000 surgeries annually. We see over 300,000 emergency patient visits annually as well, and over 1 million outpatient visits a year. If you can go to the next slide, please. So this gives you an idea of where we are. So it just shows you across New Jersey where our locations are. During today's presentation, I'll talk about our robust capital construction project throughout the system. But before getting into that, I did want to talk about COVID, how it impacted us, how we responded from a facility standpoint and across our system. So if we can go to the next slide. So we actually began planning for COVID probably in early February. Many of our clinical leadership at the various sites started to reach out to facilities to talk about what would be the best location in our facilities to serve our COVID patients. From a facility standpoint, we focused a great deal on air handling units, as you've heard from other hospitals and as you can imagine. So we were looking at how we might be able to isolate units, how we could cohort COVID patients while keeping non-COVID patients separate, how we could protect our own employees as well. So like many healthcare systems, we obviously went from a very quick patient increase. So in 10 days, we went from 0 COVID patients to 100. So we understood that the best practice would try to provide negative pressure rooms, again, to protect patients and also to protect our staff. So we quickly modified, in some cases, entire nursing units to transfer them from or convert them from regular patient rooms into COVID nursing units. In most cases, we were able to provide HEPA filtered scrubbers that exhausted out the window. In most of the locations, we were able to do that, which we thought was best practice. In locations where we couldn't, we made decisions about how we could isolate and use our return air system. The way that we were able to get the negative air pressure was really going out through our windows. So we had a few different window types here, and we also ended up removing panes of glass where we needed to. If you could go to the next slide. So this slide, it shows our total bed demand from March 9th to June 22nd, and this is across the entire system. So all of our 5 hospitals. What it shows is right around mid-April, we hit our system-wide peak. Between early March through the end of April, we evaluated daily all the projected needs, from information that we would get from our clinical leadership. We would meet as a facilities and construction team, including our clinical engineering team, and talk about how, as a system, we could get resources to where they needed to be, get materials and manpower where they needed to be. Our in-house facility team, along with many of our contractors, outside contractors, very quickly converted nursing units into COVID units. And we were working on converting both units that would serve our medical med-surg population and also critical care. we also, outside of the facilities and construction standpoint, there was a lot of equipment demands, ventilators, as I'm sure everybody was aware. So all of that was a joint effort from our teams here to make sure as we were converting rooms, perhaps to critical care, that we had the right monitoring and the right gases, the right power for ventilators and for monitoring support. You can go to the next slide, please. So this just shows at least one hospital, which is, it's showing Morristown Medical Center. What it's showing is the bed capacity, of the COVID bed capacity versus the demand. And so the solid red line at the top is the total of total beds, whether it would be med surge or critical care. And so we would, you see it generally follows pretty closely to the dashed red line that's below there, which was the demand. And so, we felt that we were really staying ahead of it, although it's changed hourly, as I'm sure the other institutions can talk about. And it was a constant, meeting with each other, getting feedback from each other, and definitely having great clinical leadership in informing us of, all right, we need you to convert the next unit. And they really leaned on us and said, where do you recommend we go next? So we had a great partnership, and there's a lot of trust, I think, from our clinical leadership down to using our expertise to say, here's what we recommend, and this is why. And so trust went a long way, and partnership in really projecting where we were going and staying ahead of the COVID demand. So you can see is, obviously in mid-April, we were hoping we were at our peak. We didn't know we were at our peak, so we kept preparing. So you see a large gap, but that was really, we prepared probably 2 more floors, 2 more units here at Morristown anyway than needing. So, we were glad not to need it. And it was worth having that, that feeling that we could provide it. So, at the rest of the slide really shows that we curtailed back the COVID units and returned them back to regular patient units. We left a lot of things in place in case there is a surge. So if you can go to the next slide. So this is just a simple sample of, a photo of one of our scrubber units with HEPA filtration that was exhausting to the outside. So this is showing one of the type of windows that we had. This is probably our easiest window, which is, we called it our bucket window. We used a piece of plexiglass and fed the exhaust hose outside with a little dryer vent on the outside. So each meeting that we had daily was really an analysis, okay, how many scrubbers do we think we're getting in? So how many can we convert? So really a big team effort of staying ahead and always making sure we had resources where they were needed. The other picture on the side is just another example of things that we did. So we put vision lights, patient room doors, so that we could conserve PPE. That allowed the nursing staff, the caregivers, to look from the outside to observe the patient first before they really donned all their PPE to go in. I think Joe Lorino touched on some of the fact of we provided a pathway for, tubing to go from equipment that was on outside of the room to go through the, like a grommet hole essentially into the room, so that again, we could have staff on the outside. We would position our physiological monitoring in those critical care units so that it could be seen from this vision panel. Early on, we did add that ball in the wall that shows you that you do have negative pressure. We ultimately, ordered as many as we could, and they weren't arriving in time. And so our facilities team would train our nursing staff to confirm that they had negative pressure at the rooms by using the little, smoke. So we were handing out those little bottles of, powder smoke for them to test as well. You can go to the next slide. So really, after the peak, and as we, had a little bit of a a breather, obviously from every department leadership down. We wanted to be able to document what we did and also create a strategy moving forward with a potential surge or a future pandemic. So we have a lot of documentation from all of our hospital sites showing what we did, the dates we did them, and then we took that information and really looked at lessons learned and said, all right, well, now that we know what we did, what would we do differently? How would we phase it? Certain locations we were able to, take an entire nursing unit and convert it completely. That wasn't always an option at every location. So, and obviously a big impact, as Bob had mentioned, was the cancellation of elective surgeries. Again, I'm going to use air quotes. And, that had a big impact on our overall census. So these lessons learned, and this slide essentially tells us, this is our summary of what our objectives are should we get a surge and for any future pandemic. So once again, as Bob mentioned, every hospital, took a really huge hit in revenue. So one of our first objectives is, how can we keep our perioperative and maternity services open? And if it is closed by the government by mandate, then how can we get them, reopen more quickly? We wanted to avoid using, PACUs or spaces near our surgeries for COVID patients so that our surgical services can continue. The third was protect revenue from perioperative and diagnostic services and making every effort to keep safely open. There's in parentheses there is just a fact about how much was lost and how long it will really take hospitals to recover. And obviously that's a huge impact. And then the fourth objective was to create clearly defined COVID versus non-COVID zones, again, so we manage our PPE very well and manage our patient population well. Overall, the playbook identifies a strategy to open almost 1,200 COVID-capable beds, including med-surg, critical care, and hospice. This is over 25% over our peak. So many of you that have sponsored today, as Jerry was reading out the list, over half of the sponsors today were critical in being our partners, as they're partners with us normally. They're especially partners with us during COVID, and it was really a team effort, and we appreciate how many people were able to assist us. So the next item I'll get into really is the construction. So hospitals are building, and we are fortunate to keep building. So we had a few projects that were in construction during COVID. We were able to continue construction on several projects. We made accommodations with our construction manager partners to make sure that we were providing safe environment for workers. We did make some decisions to delay start of a project, but ultimately we were able to start more projects. So we were, it's great to be in healthcare because it is challenging, but it's also one of the places that keeps building. So I feel very lucky to be in it. One of the projects that, again, as Joe said, projects that were funded, we were fortunate in that our projects remained funded. So at Morristown, we started our cogeneration and electrical consolidation project. So our goals, this slide shows, the goals of the project, which is really reducing our annual utility costs, be in a better position if we do experience outages, and so we can maintain, essential services, and then reduce our carbon footprint. One of our policy is that if we do have a power outage, we certainly have emergency generators. If you're in the middle of a surgery, we allow that surgery to continue, but we don't start any other new surgeries if we still are not on if we're not back on utility power. So the cogen project has been something that has been a long time in planning. We received our town approvals last year. We received our funding early this year. We received confirmation of a grant probably about a year and a half ago. So we've are very excited. We got started. You can actually go to the next slide, Penny. We were able to get started. This slide shows a rendering. The top photo is or the top rendering of what the building will look like. So within that building will be our combustion turbine and electrical switchgear. The footprint, the plan on the bottom, that red rectangle is really the building that you're seeing in elevation. This is going to be over on the east side of our campus. It's going to hide our cooling towers, so I think it's actually going to improve the look of the east side here. Next slide, please. So we were. This is just a simple diagram showing showing what cogeneration is and what our what we're using, which is the solar turbine MERC 50. We actually have placed our major equipment orders for gas compressor, for the turbine, and for the heat recovery steam generator. And we did start with Holt Construction and CPT in our boiler room, which is really the phase 1 of the project. It's decommissioning or removing a previously decommissioned boiler and moving over a smaller boiler to make room for that heat recovery steam boiler. Phase 2, which is really the major building, is actually going to go out to bid shortly. We're looking to start construction on that turbine building in late September, and the project overall will go until December of 2021. So you can go to the next slide. So our next project at Morristown, which again, we were in design when COVID came upon us, but fortunately we are still funded, we're still approved to go, is Con 5, the 5th floor of our Con building, and an HVAC upgrade. When we finished last year, we finished our Gagnon vertical expansion, which allowed us to add 72 patient beds. And what that means is that we can go back and renovate some of our older units that still have semi-private beds to private. One of the things with the older units is that it has through-wall, piped units that we need to get rid of. So the major part of this, and it's kind of a very busy slide, that's our entire campus, but if you can see the gray rectangles, in the middle is the air handlers. So we're going to place 2 new air handlers in the center of campus. So it's going to be a interesting logistics challenge for us to get them there, but we will manage. It's also right near our helipad, is on the roof of the Con building. So if you can go one more slide. So the Con building, these 2 units that are going to be put on the roof will actually serve, are designed to serve the 5th, 4th, and 3rd floor. We chose probably pretty obviously that it was important to renovate top down with the addition of the new units and getting ductwork down through the building. There's a penthouse there that we will take out old units and be able to supplement with these new units. These 2 renderings show, the main nurse station and 1 patient room. Overall, the project is, the 5th floor is 21,000 square feet. So we'll be renovating mostly semi-private rooms into private rooms. We can go one more slide, please. And so this shows the overall floor plan. And I guess what I wanted to point out is that the gray corridor that you see essentially goes from the east side of our campus to the west side of our campus. So while we do this renovation, we will need to maintain that corridor access and that pathway for our visitors, our staff, and patient transport. So this will be a phased project, and it will start in September. We did, again, because we were in the middle of design during COVID, we went back and made accommodations to account for COVID or emerging respiratory diseases. So the north side, the north and west, is those 16 patient rooms will have the ability to be negative pressure. We increased the size of our air handlers to have HEPA filtration. We increased our coil sizes so that we can cool efficiently. So one of the things, just to backtrack on COVID a bit, was that because it was occurring in March and April, and we were exhausting outside and in some cases dialing down the supply so that we could get that negative pressure, we were all concerned that if it was, heat of summer or July and August, that we wouldn't be able to maintain comfort for the patient. So as we continue on many of our projects, we are trying to get that, get our air handlers sized appropriately so that whenever something hits, that we'll be prepared for it. You can go to the next slide, please. So one of the other projects that we're working on or continue to work on is our Cancer Center Master Plan. So it started about 2 years ago. We finished, so it's there's 4 floors in our Cancer Center building. There's also a floor below, which is really our surgical services and not necessarily part of the Cancer Center. So we started this master plan a couple of years ago. We did renovations on the 4th floor, and then we finished the 3rd floor renovation in January of this year. And that was building a new infusion suite on the 3rd floor. We had temporarily moved the suite because it was on the 3rd floor down to the 2nd floor. And then we moved it into a former infusion area, and then we were able to move it back up. So that allows us to start the 2nd floor and the 1st floor. So what remains of the master plan is a renovation to the 2nd floor to maximize the number of exam rooms for 4 physician practices, cancer subspecialties. And then the 1st floor will really have a central lab, central registration. There'll be radiology and improvements to our radiation oncology area. So what you're seeing on the slide now are 2 renderings of the 1st floor. So partial, registration area and the entry area. On the next slide, you'll see the 2nd floor. You'll see 2 renderings showing the check-in desk and the waiting area. And then the plan is on the other side. It is going to be a phased project. There's currently 16 exam rooms on the floor, mostly on the south side. The old infusion space was the north side. So we'll be able to start in the old infusion space, renovate that, and move into the new area, and then continue renovations. We're finishing up our documents now, and we will be sending those out to bid in mid-September. Next slide, please. So 2, we're also working on some operating room renovations. This is just 2 examples. We're doing an equipment replacement in our endovascular, one of our endovascular ORs, hybrid OR. So we are replacing existing equipment to new equipment. And then on the left side of the plan is a new labor and delivery operating room. This really, a catalyst for this again was COVID. During the pandemic, we actually moved births that were at Chilton to Morristown. And so that really drove a need for an additional OR. So we are finishing plans on both of these projects and are filing with the state, and will be going out to bid in early fall. Next slide, please. So we're also been talking about a master plan at Morristown. So we're in the very early stages. We started the early stages late last year and into January. Again, we did get a little derailed with COVID, but still a necessary process. These were the first early drawings showing a building. Where could we add building? We have our existing site. We have opportunity on site. So this was the start to look at where could we add another building. So this shows a new building in blue all the way over on the west side of the campus. It would probably be a patient tower. Again, we're in the early stages. If you go to the next slide, we'll show you what we have on the east side is really an aging parking structure. So the blue is a potential replacement to that parking structure, and the purple was just an exploration of maybe the potential for a administrative building or services building, so that we could get some of those services that are within the hospital still located on the property, but not in the hospital main, so we can turn that space over for clinical functions. You can go to the next slide, please. So some of our other facilities at Overlook Medical Center, I think Robert Peak had presented a lot on the master plan last year, so I just wanted to give a brief update on that. This was the overall site plan for Overlook, showing you some of the locations of those plans, like the garage, the 8th floor vertical addition, and the Children's Center. So if you can go to the next slide. The Children's Addition is shown in plan here. That started in the emergency room and is an 11,000 square foot Children's Center addition, which will provide both a hybrid of an inpatient pediatric and emergency pediatric unit. It's going to include new waiting room, new triage areas, and new patient drop-off. Again, the HVAC system had been redesigned to provide negative air pressure to all the rooms in response to COVID, and it's going to use latest technology in heat recovery and UVC technology for disinfection in the air handlers. Site work and foundation will begin in early fall, and construction is expected to take a year. On the next slide is the East Wing 8th floor vertical addition. This is a rendering of what that will look like, really in the cream and white color at the top. If you go to the next slide, Patty, please, that's showing you the floor plan of that same project. So it's in the planning phase now. It's going to provide intensive care, critical care, neuro-intensive care units, and still in the planning phase, and now taking another look at the HVAC, similar to the Children's Center, so that we can provide negative pressure on demand. The next slide shows a rendering on the right side of the parking garage, and then on the left side is the progress photo from construction. So this will add 648 parking spaces for employees. They'll also have 8 electric vehicle charging stations with the ability to provide more if needed. It's in construction and it'll be finished later this year. On the next slide, at Overlook, again, in partnership with PSE&G, we've completed an LED lighting upgrade to over 1 million square feet within the hospital, and including 2 medical office buildings that are on the site. And then the project also includes replacement of a centrifugal chiller, piping, automation, new air handling units, and another specialty chiller for a 12 operating room suite. Moving on to Chilton Medical Center in Pompton Plains, we're renovating and expanding the emergency department. This is, again, a project that was already underway in design, and we were able to go back to to our leadership and our board and say, this is the time to, what accommodations should we make now, again, due to COVID. So that redesign went into a quick redesign over the course of this past summer, and drawings at this point are actually at the state and out to bid. So there's going to be 22 private treatment rooms, 10 enclosed bays, and accommodation for a pandemic response. So that means that there's going to be really 3 zones that will have negative pressure, so that you could isolate the red zone, for example, if you have COVID patients, but still use the yellow and the green for non-COVID, because you'll be able to do that isolation. The project is currently, as I said, out to bid. They're going to start construction in the fall, and it's, again, all rooms will have the ability for negative pressure. And then on the next slide is still the emergency department. It's showing some of the renderings of what those treatment bay will look like and what those enclosed bays will look like. You also see more private registration, and then you're seeing nurses stationed there. That's got glass now to provide some infection prevention, still give visualization as needed, but some audible privacy. One of the things I did not mention, but during COVID, and even coming back from COVID, if you will, is a lot of we continue to get support from our partners of, how do we, where do we put plexiglass? How do we keep people protected? So I think this rendering and that drawing at the bottom really shows here's another option. We can still give protection, but still maintain that visualization that we know we need. The next slide is our Hackettstown project at Hackettstown. So we've been expanding the infusion and medical oncology space. This project started construction in June of 2019. It's actually 3 phases. One phase is actually slated to be complete in August, and then another phase complete in October, and then the final phase early next year. So it's expanding giving us more exam rooms, consult rooms, and additional infusion bays. The next slide is our Newton Medical Center. We are replacing a CT with the latest GE CT. A mobile unit has been on site to maintain patient care, and this project will finish up in September. And then there's another equipment replacement project for nuclear medicine that's in the works and will start later this year. The next slide shows our just Atlantic Health System overall, things that we want to look at for energy savings and resiliency. We're working on a solar panel project. We're in the design phase, looking to see if we can get solar panels on 2 of our garages here at Morristown Medical Center, and then looking at carports at 3 other medical centers, Chilton, Hackettstown, and Newton. We're also working with PSE&G on engineering studies at Chilton and at Morristown to see what opportunities exist for us to continue to try and save energy. We've had successful projects with PSE&G here at Morristown already, similar to what's going on at Overlook with air handler replacement and LED lighting replacement. So now I'll move into our offsites. So I was predominantly talking about what was going on within our hospitals, but we have a lot of activity at our offsites as well. So this is showing you what's going on at Clark right now. So that's in construction in a medical office building on 1 floor, 28,000 square feet. It includes clinical space for diagnostic imaging, orthopedics, physical therapy, rheumatology, cardiology, primary care, lab services, and an urgent care. It's expected to be open later this year. The next slide is Rockaway. It's our ambulatory building in Rockaway. We're working in 2 locations there. We're actually working on an ambulatory surgery center on 1 floor, which will have 4 operating rooms and 15 positions that'll flex between pre-op and post-op in various, phase 1 and phase 2. Construction is planned to be complete later this year. And then the next slide is also Rockaway. We're working on another level for a family medicine practice. So it's about 7,000 square feet. It's going to be a total of 21 exam rooms. It's in construction now. It'll also have an X-ray suite within the practice, and we expect to be complete construction at the end of this year. The next slide is Bridgewater. There's a medical office building in Bridgewater. We recently began construction on 37,000 square feet on both the 1st and 2nd floors. The clinical services that we'll provide there will include cardiology, orthopedics, urology, family practice, oncology, infusion with a pharmacy and a lab. Construction just began recently, and it's going to be completed in phases. Some of that completion will be at the end of this year. And then finally, the last slide is our Paramus offsite. So we are showing an ambulatory surgery center in the final planning stages in Paramus. So it's 21,000 square feet. It's going to have 2 operating rooms. We'll have 8 positions for pre-op that'll flex between pre-op and post-op recovery. The site will also include physical therapy, orthopedics, and imaging. Construction will begin very soon. In some areas, we're still targeting to open at the end of this year. The surgery center will be completed in the 1st quarter of 2021. So those are the highlights of the construction that we have going on. We have a lot of other smaller projects, but those were the highlights that we wanted to hit. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Karen. Everyone. Again, Chris has been posting them in the general chat. If you click into the general chat, you should be able to see the presentations from New Jersey Natural Gas. I think Bob Gerard's is up there, Valley Health, and the presentation that we're about to hear from Cooper will be posted there as well. It's easier to follow along that way, and you can save them that way. And I believe that Mike Savage's presentation will be posted there before his presentation as well. So moving on, as has been a focus of the Alliance for some time, Camden is a place where we're experiencing significant, what Chris Calorie would say, Camden Rising. We're having a significant expansion and commitment from the eds and meds, which has really created a lot of opportunity in the city. And it's really been anchored by the participation of Cooper University Hospital. So I'm glad this morning to be able to introduce our next speaker, Andy Bush. Andy is the Vice President of Real Estate and Special Projects at Cooper and is responsible for Cooper's real estate, including all transactions, strategy around suburban expansion, consolidation of existing facilities, and all financing related to real estate. He's also actively working with Cooper's institutional partners, including the universities of Rowan and Rutgers, and is planning an anchor-based strategy to stabilize and redevelop Camden. Prior to joining Cooper, he worked as a consultant to a variety of healthcare and real estate firms, and has also held a variety of positions at Tishman Speyer, Brandywine, and also SA Micro, which is an engineering consulting firm. So I'm really pleased this morning to introduce our next speaker, Andy Bush. Welcome.
Thanks, Amanda. Amanda gave a little bio, so I oversee all of Cooper's real estate transactional stuff, and work really closely with our strategic planning, finance, operations, and project teams to really provide a platform for care, so that our staff can take excellent care of our patients. I want to give, much as Karen did, a little overview of Cooper as a whole, for those from the north side of the state. We are a 365-bed academic tertiary care hospital. We're adding another floor, or fitting out another floor, so it's soon to be more critical care beds. We're the only level 1 trauma center in South Jersey. We have nearly 1,000 medical staff, over 100 outpatient facilities. We have very close ties with a lot of our institutional partners in the city of Camden. We have a medical school where our employed staff essentially provide the faculty for Rowan medical students. We have an affiliation with MD Anderson, so we have MD Anderson Cancer Center at Cooper, which has multiple locations, not just in Camden, but in the surrounding community as well. We have a Children's Regional Hospital on our site, and we have lots of sites across the Surgery Center in Voorhees and urgent cares throughout the region. Next slide, please, Penny. Just some stats from 2019. We have over 8,000 employees, nearly 30,000 hospital admissions, 1.7 million outpatient encounters, which is quite a number. Emergency department visits are over 80,000 a year. We continue to see constant increases in volume there, and we're working on currently plans to expand even further. Over 4,000 trauma cases and nearly 50,000 urgent care visits in the last year. Moving on to the next slide, Penny. We're really proud of all the things that we do at Cooper clinically. I want to touch on just a few. The MD Anderson Cancer Center. We have an affiliation with Inspira for cardiology services. So we are partnering with lots of institutions within our region, even beyond Camden. Our Center for Critical Care Services has been remarkable during our COVID pandemic. I can't say enough great things about the work that they've been doing over the last few months. If you could move on, Penny, to the next slide. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into some of our overview. We established a partnership with MD Anderson that coincided with the opening of our cancer center in Camden in 2013. I know Susan Basselvin is in the meeting now somewhere virtually. She was instrumental in bringing this to life. The cancer center has been tremendous for us. We've had an incredible growth. And we've nearly doubled our volume from 2013 to 2019. And I'm sure it's doubled by now as we're in the middle of 20. Next slide, please. We have, as I mentioned, we have a partnership with Rowan, where the Cooper Medical School of Rowan University, where our faculty, our employed staff serve as the faculty for the medical school. But really, this is serving as the training ground for our future staff and future caregivers throughout the region. And it's not just, we have 408 students that are currently enrolled in CMSRU. But beyond that, there's the Rutgers School of Nursing is in Camden, and that is also a pipeline for our staff and future employees and caregivers. We also have the Rutgers-Rowan Joint Board building, Health Science Center, which is providing a platform for training for our own staff, but also a pipeline for future staff and caregivers throughout the region. If you could flip to the next slide, please, Penny. A little bit on our COVID response. I won't go into the technical details of all of the HVAC changes that were made in our institution, but I wanted to highlight a little bit about the people that really are on the front lines for Cooper and made everything work, because that's really our response was really focused around the people and the sort of the brave soldiers that they're at the forefront of the pandemic. They've just been doing a phenomenal job of, first taking care of each other, keeping themselves safe, but then, treating our patients tirelessly. A couple of the things that we did pretty early on in the process, if you could go back a slide. We mobilized our incident management team. We had surge plans like just about every other health system in the region. I think that we were somewhere in the latter half of our surge plans. Our census of COVID patients climbed over 100. We're now somewhere in the 20s. So we made it part of the way. We had med surge floors that were treating surgical patients that switched over to COVID units, and the staff were incredible. They did it without a hitch. No reservations of taking care of this new patients with new protocols. Really super proud of our staff. We worked pretty closely with federal, state, and local officials on a coordinated response. We coordinated the response for COVID across all the hospitals in South Jersey. We rigorously monitored our supply chain to make sure that our patients and staff had everything they needed to treat any suspected COVID patients. We ordered spools of elastic to potentially make our own masks. We scouted the gray market to try to find whatever PPE we thought that we would need to keep our patients and staff safe. So, a lot of the, I can't tell you how much money we've spent on PPE, but it's astounding. We did a lot of things like coordinated testing sites for the county. We were part of the pilot COVID testing sites for all long-term care facilities in our region, which, I'm sure saved lives. We instituted remote worker policies like a lot of folks. So, this is the first time I'm wearing a suit in a while. For a while, everybody else, it was shorts and flip-flops working from home, but we've moved past that. We've instituted temperature screening and questionnaires for patients, thermal scanning as people walk in, and countless signs, plexi shields, and stickers on the floor for spacing everywhere, much like you've seen in just about every other institution. Moving on to the next slide, Penny. Just a little bit about some of the current work that we're working on now. It's under construction. So I mentioned the 10th floor pavilion at Cooper. So we're adding 30 ICU beds. This is a project that we started well before the pandemic, and we looked at a couple of options to accelerate this. We've taken some minor steps to accelerate it, but it'll open this fall, and that'll be a great addition to Cooper. The architect on this was Ballinger, and our CM was HSC. If you could move on to the next slide. A couple other projects under construction now. We're in the middle of replacing an MRI, a 20-year-old MRI in our basement. Super challenging to get to the MRI and get it out and then get the new one in because it's in the middle of an existing suite. The architect on this was Sapphire and Alboran, and the CM was Phoenix. But with a 20-year-old unit breaking down constantly, there's not a lot of faith in that unit. So a very, very needed project. Next slide. Adjacent to the MRI is an IR lab that also is a bit dated. So we're adding another lab, and we're also updating some of the existing rooms. Sapphire and Alboran and Phoenix were both involved in this project, and that comes online very shortly. Next slide. Another project we're proud of. Our cancer center has really grown tremendously over the last 5 or 6 years. And we started that project with a couple of shelled floors. We are building out the last of our shelled spaces in that building. And we're working with Stantec as the architect and Torcon as the CM on that project. And thrilled to have a little bit more clinical space in that building to continue to provide care for the residents of South Jersey. You could flip to the next slide. A project that I'm super proud of, and I know Susan is proud of as well. We opened the Cherry Hill Specialty Center in the middle of the pandemic. We opened in April. A fantastic team. Ewan Cole is the architect. Stantec provided project management support, and Torcon finished this. I can't thank those folks enough for not missing a beat. It provides a lot of the things that you would hope to see in our sort of new environment. Touchless check-in and those sort of things. Really a state-of-the-art facility that we're very, very proud of. I want to just touch base on a couple of other projects. You can leave it on that slide for a minute. Bob mentioned, he talked a lot about cogen, and some others have as well. We opened a cogen plant earlier this spring. I can't speak to the exact energy savings, but we're very excited to have that up and running. And we're glad that we got it running before the pandemic really started. And I must say, I'm super impressed by Valley's project, particularly the ability to flip airflow around. I know that will be of vital importance going forward as we have a lot of these respiratory diseases, hopefully, that hopefully stay away, but are likely here to stay for a bit. If you could flip to the next slide, Penny. I want to talk a little bit about what's next. We've been working for the last year or so on a master plan of our Camden campus. We're a single hospital system that has a pretty tight urban environment, and we've grown well beyond the capacity within our campus. So we've been trying to figure out how to move the non-clinical things out of the path of clinical growth. One of the buildings that you see on the right there is 101 Haddon, which we purchased last year. It's a former state office building. It's currently vacant. It's one of the near-term projects for Cooper, is trying to figure out how to move some of those non-clinical things out of the way for clinical expansion. And we'll put some of those will end up in this building. A couple of the other things that we're working on right now, we're working with Array and Torcon on a reconfiguration of our ED. That'll allow for further growth of our emergency department and further ability to separate appropriate patients and cohort them as needed. We're also working on a select ambulatory expansion. consistent with trying to push care to lower cost environments. Cherry Hill is hopefully the tip of the iceberg for us, and we'll have projects in other markets. I don't want to dive too deeply into some of those quite yet, but we would expect that there will be further clinical expansion for Cooper outside the hospital to appropriate cost of care settings. Like many systems, a lot of our work in 20 was deferred to 21. I think a lot of the projects that were under construction were clearly funded, so they kept going and really went off without a hitch. We've diverted a lot of resources to make sure that we had appropriate cash on hand for PPE and that sort of thing. I think, in 21 and beyond, we seem to be bouncing back in terms of volumes and back to our run rate. We're hopeful that there's not another surge and we can continue to attract people to the hospital. You've seen a lot of a lot of commercials on TV, whether it's our system or other systems, really trying to get people to come back and seek their preventative care. I think that's going to be pretty important. We really want people to come back and make sure that they don't come back in a worse condition. And hopefully, once people do come back, our revenue and resources will stabilize, and we can continue along the growth projection that we have. We remain confident in our strategic direction and our team, and I want to thank the Alliance, and hopefully next year we can do this in person.
Thanks so much, Andy. Greatly appreciate it. Our last speaker and closer today is Mike Savage. Mike is the program manager of PSE&G's highly successful hospital efficiency program, a $271 million multi-year initiative that is funding the installation of energy efficiency measures for a critical market segment, hospitals and healthcare facilities. Mike manages a team of audit and engineering professionals that provide professional services for the hospital program. Over the past 7 years, Mr. Savage has overseen the completion of 56 projects in 36 hospitals, comprised of numerous energy efficiency technology improvements, including heating and cooling central plant upgrades, controlled pumping and air handling upgrades, and lighting. Those projects have expected to save hospitals over $17 million in utility costs annually. In addition, 2 combined heat and power projects have been completed, and 3 are under construction, and 3 are in the planning engineering stage, with PSE&G assisting the program that I spoke of earlier today, the NJEDA's Energy Resiliency Bank, funding these projects. Please give a warm welcome to Michael Savage. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Bob, and thanks to all of our friends at the Alliance for inviting us back again for an opportunity to share our updates. Penny, are you ready to display the PowerPoint?
Hey, Mike, if you're not seeing it, I apologize, but it is up on the screen. Penny has it shared with the group.
I'm not seeing it yet, so I don't want to wing through this. How can I get this displayed?
If you don't mind, give yourself a quick refresh, and you might disappear and come back, and it's okay. But I don't want to. There you go. Everybody just give us a quick second. I'm going to work with him on the side, and I'll be right back. So just give us 1 second.
Chris?
Okay. Are you there, Mike?
I am. I did the refresh. Apologies for the technical issues here. I don't see the presentation, but I can otherwise put it up here so I can walk you through the what we have.
Yeah, I apologize for that. It is showing on the screen, so it does look like everybody can see it. And I did share it with the group as well. So they have a PDF version, and they also have the version that's being shared. I'm not sure why that's happening. I apologize, Mike.
That's quite all right. We'll work through it. So Peggy, I'm going to start on slide number 2, talking about PSE&G. Who are we, and how do we impact the state? We are the state's largest utility. PSE&G is the utility side of the business. We also have PSEG Power, which is the wholesale merchant generator, which you won't hear very much about, but we generate power and sell into PJM. We have nuclear plants in South Jersey, solar facilities, etc. PSE&G is the public face of the company. That's the utility company. We have about 2.2 million electric customers and about 1.8 million gas customers. And as you can see from the map on slide 2, if you can see this, you can get a sense of our service territory. It's kind of the urban core of the state, running from roughly the GW Bridge in North Jersey to the Ben Franklin Bridge in South Jersey, and some distance to either side. We are in the transmission business. We're in the electric and gas distribution business. We do invest in renewables and obviously energy efficiency, which is what we're going to talk about here. And we do have an appliance service provider business as well. And you can see from this slide, you get a little breakdown of how our revenues are generated for rate making purposes. I'm going to go to slide 3, Penny, if you can advance. We are on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for North America, 12 consecutive years, and we're one of 7 U.S. utility companies selected for that list. It's a great source of pride. We are currently replacing hundreds of miles of aging gas pipelines. That's been in the news over the last couple of years. We continue to replace that aging infrastructure to decrease the release of methane gas. We have currently before the Board of Public Utilities our Clean Energy Future program, which I'll talk about in a little detail toward the end of the presentation, but that's a $4 billion program. We have installed the largest collection of EV charging stations in the state so far. We've installed over 145 chargers at customer locations, plus another 45 chargers at our own locations. We've invested over $993 million to develop and finance solar power. And we currently have residential Smart Start thermostat rebates and data analytics that we provide to our customers. The thermostats help save a tremendous amount of energy because they're programmable. And the data analytics help our customers understand how they're currently using energy. So that's a quick overview of who we are. Second part of the presentation will focus on hospitals. Penny, I've advanced to slide 5. I still can't see what you're showing, but if you can follow so the group can follow, that'd be great. We've been running the hospital program now for 10 years. As Bob mentioned, we've completed 56 projects in 36 different hospitals. We currently have 4 under construction, 4 are in engineering, 9 are in audit or evaluation, and we have 11 more in queue. We are currently working on, I think it's our 5th or 6th funding tranche of around $60 million, which we're developing projects for right now. The process is fairly straightforward. We provide an energy audit at no cost to the customer. What we're looking to do is establish very solid baseline of existing conditions, existing data, et cetera, and then start to look at where the opportunities may be. From there, after vetting with the customer, we move to engineering. We'll provide the engineering to the customer and work with the customer as the engineering is developed into bid-ready plans. Once the bid-ready plans are developed, we turn the project over to the hospital. It's theirs to build, and we provide the funding. We provide 100% of the cost up through the completion of the project, at which point the customer will start to repay their portion, which is typically 40 to 45% of the overall cost. Upon completion, they'll repay over 60 months on bill, and we will conduct measurement and verification for 12 months following completion to verify that the savings are actually being realized. The repayment is interest-free, and what we often find is that the savings offset the customer's share of the repayment, and it can be close to cash neutral. Not always, but can be very close. The M&V is also important post construction because it helps the customer understand how the systems are operating, whether or not they can be tweaked further so they can enjoy the benefit of the project. I've moved to slide 6 now, Penny. These are typical energy conservation measures that we install. We do a lot of work in the central plant, which is the cooling plant, chillers, pumping, cooling towers on the cooling side. And we also do heating improvements, boilers, burners, controls, stack economizers, steam traps. We'll go for all that. Insulation on pipes, that's all important. And we kind of consider all that low-hanging fruit. Lighting, we've done a tremendous amount of lighting as well. You heard earlier from some of our customers' lighting projects that we finished. We continue to look for opportunities in lighting because it's a simple, straightforward measure, and it immediately benefits the hospitals. You don't think about motors, but there are, I don't know how many motors, millions of motors out there, and we try to continually make them more efficient. Nobody really thinks about motors, but they run 24/7, 365 for 20 years. If we can shave 3-4% off the cost or the need of electricity, we're saving a lot of energy over time. We've also looked at some other opportunities. One of them is replacing old CRTs with flat panel LCDs. We do a lot of work, as you've heard earlier, with air handling equipment on the air side, both for heating and cooling. And we're currently exploring a kind of an interior storm window where the hospital has only single pane glazing. There may be an opportunity, we're still exploring this, but there may be an opportunity to effectively save energy by implementing these interior storm windows. Finally, we look at building management systems, and we do a lot of upgrades there because we want to collect the data and see how the systems are operating. But also that goes to a lot of the automation and programming that's involved in the projects. I'm going to slide 7 now. This is where we get to brag a little bit. Through this program, we've won quite a few awards. The photo you see, this was actually given by St. Peter's. It was the Bishop's Award, and you can see Ralph Izzo, our chairman, is accepting the award. We've received awards at a national, state, and local level from our peers. And we don't do this for the awards, but it's very gratifying to know that that the work we're doing is being recognized as beneficial to our hospital customers and the market in general. I've advanced to slide 8. So this is a case study of Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital at Somerset, where we completed a $5.7 million project. We upgraded the lighting to LED lighting. We changed out 2 of the 3 chiller plants, and we added a lot of pumping, controls, and VFDs, et cetera, all to drive energy efficiency. We've estimated that we've saved about $600,000 a year for the hospital by doing this project. And this is important because the hospitals then can redeploy those savings into their core mission. So earlier today, you heard a lot of discussion from Valley, Atlantic Health, and Cooper about improvements they're making to better serve the community. By spending less on energy, they're able to redeploy those dollars in support of those improvements. So these are very important programs. Hackensack, I'm sorry, I've advanced to slide 8. Hackensack University Medical Center, we've done several projects there. We rebuilt their chiller plant, added pumping and VFDs. We did lighting throughout the campus, and then we actually interconnected a couple buildings that were functioning independently. We tied them into the central plant. The total project value at Hackensack so far is around $13 million, saving them about $1.3 million. And again, the same savings can go back into their core mission. If we advance to the next slide, just some quick statistics: 56 projects completed at 36 hospitals. We have projects going at 7 hospitals, and that includes traditional energy efficiency projects as well as combined heat and power projects. Mentioned 13 hospitals in engineering. That again would include CHP. And these projects typically run 36 to 42 months. There are seasonal implications. There are funding implications, but generally we find these projects generally take 36 to 42 months end to end. And that would be from the time we first take the application and start the input all the way through the completion of the M&V period and the final reporting. I'm going to advance to slide 12. Penny, are you with me? I hope you are.
Good to go.
This
guys.
slide
Good to
talks
go.
about our CEF. Okay, good. Thanks, Chris. This slide talks about our CEF program, or Clean Energy Future. In response to the Clean Energy Act, which was passed in 2018, we've proposed to the BPU a program called our Clean Energy Future, which is to make critical investments in clean energy that really will propel us to become a national leader. We're looking at the traditional energy efficiency that we pursue, electric vehicle charging infrastructure on a much larger scale. You can see here utility scale energy storage and technology that will help us. The technology is poignant right now. We just came through the tropical storm, and had we had electronic metering available, we could have responded that much quicker and had a more accurate picture of exactly where we were in restoring the power to all of our various customers. Within this Clean Energy Future program, we've proposed 22 sub-programs. And you can see here, it's the idea is to make energy efficiency available across commercial, industrial, and residential market segments. And we're trying to reach hard to otherwise reach opportunities such as low income, residential, multifamily, small business, nonprofit, government, etc. If we go to slide 13, this is a very graphic overview of the breakdown of the program. Energy efficiency, we've proposed $2.5 billion, electric vehicles $261 million, energy storage $109, and energy cloud, which is the automated metering, of $714 million. We are currently in discussions with the BPU, and we're looking for feedback. We're hopeful that we'll have some direction before the end of the year. We'll have to wait and see what happens. For the audience, the energy efficiency portion of $2.5 billion, that is a continuation of many of the programs that we currently have. We're going to take hospital and multifamily, for example, as we've proposed, and combine that into what we called our engineered solutions platform, which as we've proposed will allow us to expand into colleges, continuous hospitals, multifamily, nursing homes, government complexes, etc. We expect, sorry, I've advanced to slide 14. We expect our Clean Energy Future program to grow jobs in New Jersey. They will be across trades. They'll also include jobs as energy professionals. And you can get some scale in the lower right corner, estimated Clean Energy Future jobs for EE programs, which would be mostly construction. 3,700 jobs is what we're projecting. The EV program for electric vehicle charging, that will also entail a lot of construction as we extend infrastructure. So you can see, we think this is a robust platform to advance Clean Energy Future. Now that we've talked about the 3 different segments of who we are, what our hospital program is about, and then a little case study and some idea of the Clean Energy Future, we move to the fun part. We get to look at all the pictures of some of the work we've done. You've been kind enough to sit through the presentation, so now you get to see some of the really cool shots. This shot is actually the riggers are bringing in parts of a chiller plant, and I'll show you in a minute the crane lift they had to do to get to the center of the building. I've advanced to slide 16. This is a typical energy conservation measure. This is a BMS screenshot where we take a careful look at the numbers that these plants are generating to see if they are in line with the design. In this case, the entering water temperature on the chilled side is 50 degrees and the leaving is 42. 42 is the target that we try to hit for cooling and humidity control. So this system is functioning the way we expected. Going to slide 17, this is what I mean about we go to great lengths to install equipment. This is that part of that chiller plant that I showed you a minute ago with the guys inside. This is what we had to do to get it over the building and into the center of the facility. Sometimes we have to really stretch, and we get to play with some pretty big toys to make this happen. This is a temporary chiller that's actually on its way to Overlook Medical Center to support a project that we have under construction right now. That chiller will be connected while we take down the existing chiller plant and make upgrades before bringing that back up online. So we oftentimes will employ a lot of different trades to bring these projects to fruition. This is a quick shot of 3 VFDs that are controlling pumps and motors. We find a tremendous amount of energy savings in pumping and motors. Anytime we can slow down a motor, we can pick up effectively almost 3 times the percentage we reduce. So if you reduce by 10%, you pick up almost 30% in energy savings through VFDs like these. These are tied into the building management system, or BMS, and we can collect data and log how these are performing against what we expected it to perform and the needs from the hospital, so we can project how accurately we are. Sometimes we get to install very large boilers. This one in at Morristown, this boiler is about 40 feet long and about almost 12 feet high, and was a real challenge to get in, but the contractor did a magnificent job and they made it look very easy. This is now the main boiler at Morristown. We finished this project up about 4 years ago. This is another look at the boiler plant, and I like this photo because it, in a very simple way, shows the complexity of the systems. If you just look at all the different colored piping that's going vertically and horizontally, you get an idea of how challenging it is to put these systems in while the hospitals continue functioning and serving their client needs, their patient needs. So these projects can be very complex and require a tremendous amount of planning to make them happen. The final slide is number 22. And this is just a quick shot of a chiller that we put in place. I think this is at Somerset Medical Center. And this is the finally installed piece of equipment buried in the building somewhere, but up and functioning just the way we intended. That is the extent of the presentation for today. Happy to answer any questions, but thank you for your time and attention. Chris?
Thanks a lot. Thanks. That hiccup before, but everything looked good, and we'll turn it over to Bob Gerard.
Thanks so much, Mike. And you're 100% right. The pictures tell 1,000 stories, and those were good ones. Those were a couple big toys too. That was wonderful.
The pictures are always fun to look at. Especially to the audience we have.
And thanks again,
Bob,
for your support of the Alliance for Action.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bob. Thanks all.
That concludes our program for today. I know Jerry Keenan is going to jump on behalf of Amanda Del Bene, Managing Director of Raymond James. It's been a pleasure to help host this program. Outside of the small glitch of Mike not being able to see some of the slides and a couple of comments on the side, I think it worked better than I ever imagined, and I was able to do about 2 hours of work while we were going through the program. Certainly want to thank all of our speakers today. Want to thank our attendees, and once again want to thank the Alliance and our sponsors for assisting us. Jerry, back to you.
Well, thanks a lot, Bob. And it really was terrific news all around today. But before we wrap up, let me once again thank our sponsors for making today possible. Let's start out with the Sheet Metal Workers, Local 25 of North Jersey. The best trained professionals. SMART is the indoor quality expert. Joseph DeMarc, President and Business Manager. Allen Brightway Electrical Utility, committed to superior quality and results. Concord Engineering Group, leading the charge in engineering airborne infectious disease mitigation for healthcare building systems in response to COVID-19. The Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters, representing more than 42,000 unionized carpenters throughout Delaware, the District of Columbia, Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, Virginia, West Virginia, and 10 North Carolina counties. William C. Sproul, Executive Secretary, Treasurer. Foley Incorporated. We create customer experiences that create customer experiences that create customers for life. So let me say that one more time just to get it right. Foley Incorporated. We create customer experiences that create customers for life. Fox Rothschild LLP. Nimble, entrepreneurial, resourceful, qualities you want in your lawyers. Gilbar Industries Incorporated. Holt Construction. We are builders. LF Driscoll Healthcare. Construction managers, builders. New Jersey Natural Gas, providing safe, reliable natural gas service for over 60 years. NK Architects, a regional health care planning and design firm with offices in Morristown, New York City, and Philadelphia. O'Donnell and Nacarado, excellence in engineering. Progressive Pipeline Management, innovation, quality, trust. PSE&G, we make things work for you. And Tor Electric Company, proudly serving you for more than 50 years. And finally, Witham, a top-ranking public accounting firm providing advisory, audit, and tax services to businesses and individuals on a local to global scale. Visit www.witham.com for more information. Well, I've got a lot of thank yous here today. First of all, thank you to our co-chairs, Amanda Del Bene and Bob Gerard. Each of you are members of the Alliance for Action Board of Directors, and each of you are great friends of the Alliance, and each of you were terrific in making today happen. Thanks also to each person in the Alliance for Action office for making today possible. Of course, I'm talking about Phil Beecham, Chris Hartman, Athena Exenios, Penny Grasso, and Lynn Swaljay. And thanks also to each of you today for joining us. We had well over 150 construction, healthcare, and other leaders join us today. And it's great to get this important information out to each of you. I hope each of you can join us next Tuesday for our Investing in South Jersey, Where the Action Is event, when speakers will outline billions of dollars worth of utility, wind energy, corporate, and other upcoming construction investments across South Jersey. Looking forward to seeing you then. On behalf of the Alliance for Action and its membership, I'm Jerry Keenan. Have a great day, and don't forget, the networking room is still open. Take care.